Hey there, my name is Kenyon Curtis, and obviously I'm here with Tommy Mello from A1 Garage Door. And look, one of the reasons that we're doing this interview, this is a little bit different. If you've been paying attention to the podcasts that Tommy's been doing, he's been interviewing some great people and getting some great information, some great background, resources, knowledge, and a lot of wisdom from these top business owners, right? That some pretty impressive people that Tommy's had on, and the marketing team, we got together and thought, why don't we do this fun little interview where we kind of take a peek into Tommy's brain for a few minutes and uncover a little bit about him, because one of the things that we've realized, if you haven't had the chance to get on a discovery or a strategy call with us yet, there's some things that we're really learning and understanding about the challenges that business owners have. A lot of it we already knew, and so what we're doing though is bringing a different side of and some more information about Tommy and his journey to get here to where he's at. Just some things that could really help and connect with some of you, because look, a lot of you are in different positions. Some of you could just be getting started. Maybe you've been in business a few months or a few years. Maybe you've been around for 5 or 10 years and you've got a good flow going. Your business is working pretty good, but maybe you've plateaued, or maybe you're I would call it stuck. You may not call it stuck, but I would say stuck where you're growing, that 5, 10, 15% a year, but you know that you could do a little bit better. And so we want to bring some great information that's really going to help you understand what's going on behind the scenes with Tommy and I connecting with Home Service Expert, which is the consulting and coaching division of what we're doing here. And now it was kind of funny, like our marketing team put together a lot of questions, and I was reading through them, and honestly, it was all pretty cut and dry. It was a lot of information that you kind of already hear. So just to help you understand and get to know me a little bit, how I operate, and also again, like I said, to dig into Tommy's brain, we're going to have a few different questions and conversations about just what happened along the way. So that really looking for a way to connect with you better where you're at in your progress and in the growth of your company. Some of the challenges that you're facing. Maybe obviously Tommy's faced a lot to get here over the last, how long? 10, 11 years?
12, yeah, 12 years.
12 years.
And I did business before that too, so yeah.
Right. So Tommy's got a lot to say, and I have some great fun questions that are gonna. It's a good little insight to the mindset of a person, because one thing that I've realized and learned is that a lot of people when they're looking to grow their company or grow their business, they start to look at what other people have done, and that is a great way. That's one way to do it, and you do want to find out what systems are they using and how are they measuring and what are they looking at. But one other aspect of it is I like to look at is like, well, how are they making the decisions and what challenges did they have and how did they overcome. How did Tommy, how did you overcome some of those challenges? Because it's one thing to say, well, I implemented a certain software, for example. That's great, but there's always some type of decision making or mindset that's going on behind that really made the difference. So we're gonna have some fun and get right into it. So I know Tommy's itching to talk, aren't you?
I'm ready.
Okay, so. So now you said that you were in business before A1 Garage Doors. Then what were you doing before that?
So when I was a kid, I started a landscaping business. Normal thing. You're kids, you mow lawns, shovel snow. And then when I got out to Arizona, I was doing lifeguard, bussing tables, different things. And I decided I already know landscaping. I can mow a lawn, and I knew how to hire a little bit. So started doing that, and it was tough. I'm allergic to grass, so
okay.
Started making some pretty good money, but it was a lot of work. I mean, I'd come back with scrapes, working late hours, really labor intensive, and I'm like, it's a lot of work. It's not. I wasn't cut out for that, so I started getting into a little bit more of like sprinkler systems and water conservation. Mm-hmm. And I used to do water conservation analysis, and I got some pretty big accounts. I got the Medical Society in Phoenix, a couple $2,000 accounts, and I really didn't have a lot of overhead, so it was okay. It wasn't where I wanted to be, but it was cool. I learned a lot about business in that little few years that I did that.
Well, what kind of a business background do you have? I mean, did you take any classes or anything?
Yeah, I mean, now I got a master's degree, but back then I didn't have a whole lot. I mean, at one point, I remember one day I watched this infomercial for a Bowflex. So I went on Arizona Republic and I found one, and the guy goes, dude, you are the 20th person that called. I sold it after the first time. So I went on Craigslist and there was 8 of them. I bought all 8 of them and I put an ad in Arizona Republic. And from that point I sold 150 Bowflexes, and then I went to Total Gyms. And anything that I could find an infomercial on, I would do that. And I was flipping cars and doing the landscaping and bartending. So I always was an entrepreneur, but I was a one-man army. Like, I didn't build systems. It was me going out looking at them, me buying them, me placing the ad, me meeting the people. So I learned how to make money, and a lot of people do individually. But that's the extent of it, and that's...
So what do you think the reason was for that? Like, is it just because you were like, just pedal to the metal, make it happen? Or what do you think drove you to just kind of be like a one-man army back then?
Well, my mom and dad, they got a divorce, and it was really, I hear them arguing about bills all the time. And I remember listening to them talk about, that really was a lot for me as a kid to see that. My dad had a transmission shop, and he was always very entrepreneurial, but I just was always worried. Like, when I was 12, I got a job washing dishes because I knew I needed to, if I wanted something, I had to make my own money. And so that had a lot to do with the way I am today, on how I'm out there. Money is what I want to take out of the equation, because that's always been a big part of my equation growing up. So I think that's kind of what molded me into wanting to do some big things and big business and start new businesses. And it's not a bad thing, but there's always your why. And if I trace it back, I think it has to do a lot with how I was raised. It's not a bad thing. I love my parents. They're great, and they're still great people.
It's just the way it was, right? Sometimes we learn those lessons from our parents. So your lack of money growing up really drove you to find ways to make it.
Yeah, and I never wanted to say there's an opportunity that I can't go on. I never wanted to say, sorry, buddy, you don't have enough money, so you can't come with me tonight. You can't go to the movie. And I know nobody needs that from me. They don't rely on me to give them stuff. But I like to have the opportunity to say, let's go. Don't worry about it. If you don't have the money, you're still my friend, or you're still my family, or whatever, and never have that be part of the equation.
Gotcha. So what was the transition from just making money entrepreneurial to actually owning a business? Like, what do you think was one of the biggest hurdles for you to get to that point?
Well, I used to think of business like was flipping cars. I thought that was a business. Some people do think that's a business, but it's really not. And the way that I look at a business is, if I go out of town, if I was to leave for 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time, would I still make money? And there's not a whole lot of things I was doing at the time that would allow me to leave, whether it was bussing tables, bartending, flipping Bowflexes, flipping vehicles. If I leave, the income stops. And a lot of times in business, when you leave your business, if you're the sole brain behind it, you're the one that does the scheduling, the dispatching, you're just a key part of that business. There's nothing wrong with that. Everybody has to start somewhere. But it really isn't a business until you get each different, let's call it part of the organizational chart functioning without you. Now, you're a core piece of the business, but how did you get it to the point to where it could run itself? If Tommy, I don't like to say get hit by a bus, but if I was to hit the $1 billion lottery and I didn't need this business, could it still go on? Could people still make good money with it?
So how long did it take you with A1 Garage before you got to that point that you felt like you could walk away from it? And I imagine you were probably there sooner than you were comfortable enough to walk away from it.
Maybe. I don't know. I walked away. So the funny thing was, and I had...
walk away, I mean just by for a week, take a vacation.
Yeah.
Not worry about it.
I mean, my best friend and I got into business in end of 2006. We got into the garage door business. Great guy, still my best friend. We're just not business partners as of 2010. But back then, he would answer the phone calls. I was running a lot of the calls. He would run if he had to. And we got ourselves into a good amount of debt because he was a high producer as a service technician. And he goes, I know the margins on this stuff. It's all profit. We didn't know back then how much it cost to acquire a customer, hire a call center manager, get a great dispatcher, or a software, or pay city taxes. Who pays taxes?
Right.
So we didn't know any better, and we got ourselves into this hole, and it was bad. And one day we're out to eat, and a customer called, and he said, "Hey, can I call you back? We're at lunch." And I was like, "You're answering our phones?" And at that point, there was a lot of weed smoking, and it was just not. I was working my butt off, and unfortunately, in a business partnership, I've seen husband and wives, I've seen brothers, I've seen family members turn on each other, and we didn't turn on each other. Luckily, we were able to. I built up animosity. I think he had some animosity. We just decided to go separate ways. But part of the problem, and I think the number one problem is, from small business owners, anywhere under 10 employees, they think they're doing great on the phones. They're like, my mom answers the phones, my wife answers the phones, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, the fact is they're not really getting the booked phone calls. So booking phone calls is such a huge amount of where I see failure. Mm-hmm. Everybody says, I need to get more employees, I need to hire more people, and I get that. But first, make sure you got some of the core fundamentals down. And it starts with booking the phone calls that are coming in.
Okay. So so back to the business question. Was there a time, like, I guess, what got you from, like, we talk about, like, you know, reading the E-Myth and stuff, and there's that difference between working in the business and on the business. What was one of the biggest challenges making that flip for you?
For me, it was trust. That's why I got my mom and stepdad to move out in 2010. I needed somebody I could rely on. I needed somebody that if I was leaving, that payroll would happen. That I wouldn't get robbed from blindly. I could count on them looking and opening the mail and making sure the city tax